All right, welcome back to On Point. I'm Francis Hurd. It's great to have you with us. We're about to bring up some breaking news for you. Former President Jacob Zuma has been denied leave to appeal. That's in the Pietermaritzburg High Court. And this is a judgment that effectively stopped his private prosecution of journalist Karen Moore and prosecutor Billy Downer, who of course is crucial in his corruption case, in the arms deal case. Former President Jacob Zuma was adamant that Billy Downer should be removed from that case, saying that he leaked confidential records to the journalist Karen Moore. An earlier court found that that was not the case. It even said that the former president was abusing the court system. And now we have this latest in that the Pietermaritzburg High Court agrees and has denied leave to appeal. So we'll see if that stops the efforts of the former president to push for any sort of private prosecution that could have any impact in terms of Billy Downer acting as the NPA's prosecutor in his corruption case. All right, let's look at some numbers now. Asian stocks were mixed. We start off there. Closing this morning, investors in China sold off shares in property. Investors remain unconvinced by the efforts of authorities in China to revive activity in the mainland real estate market. In Japan, the Nikkei is slipping 0.4%. The Hang Seng in Hong Kong losing 0.6%, while the Shanghai Composite Index on the mainland in China, a different picture. It climbed 0.8%. Okay, before we come to our own markets, let's look at the United States. The S&P 500 closing slightly higher on Friday, with trading choppy towards the end of the session as investors worried about interest rates and waited tentatively for U.S. inflation data on Wednesday. The S&P 500 gaining a percentage, the Nasdaq also a slight percent, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average rose by 0.1%. All right, it's been a good start to the week on the markets. The JSE is higher and the Rand has jumped by more than 8%. The Rand opened above 19 Rand to the dollar, but it's currently trading below 18.19 to the dollar. We'll bring up those numbers when we are able to. European shares also hitting a one-week high earlier today as investors were focusing on some signs that the economy in China is stabilizing. On the local front, we've been looking at manufacturing data. On the global front, it's going to be a busy week with inflation data coming out of the United States and a meeting of the European Central Bank in focus later. Let's bring it all together. We're joined by Bright Khumalo from Vestac Asset Management. Bright, thank you for being with us. Tell us more about what's buoying the Rand. Let's start there. It's not looking too bad.
Hi, Francis. Thanks for having me. I think you've explained quite nicely to say, we started around, 19 Rand 05 to the US dollar, but the greenback has eased a little against all of its group of 10 peers, and that's what you're seeing there. The strengthening against the US dollar is not just our South African story, it's happening across the board, and from where we're sitting right now, I think we are around 18 Rand 93 cents to the US dollar. And for some reason, that's been, it meant risk on here on the JSE. We've got, the overall JSE up about 0.8%, resources up 1.5%. That's mostly what's driving our market. And industrials also up about 0.9%. Financials trying to play catch up there, up 0.25% or 0.25% there. If you want to look at, the top winners and losers, you have Anglo Plat up 4.6%, Impala Platinum up 4.4%, and Sibanye-Stillwater up 3%. In the losers column, we have obviously we'll have those rand hedges like Richmond down 1.7%. We have Sanlam down 1.1%, and Outsurance down about 0.75% there.
So you mentioned some of the winners being the miners. Is there a sense that they will enjoy a better market if China stabilizes? Is that the focus right now?
It's definitely still a mostly China story because, the long-term expectation of the Chinese economy growth is expected to be around 4 to 6%, and they're doing basically numbers that are below that, and currently they're having their own tribulations there with the likes of Country Garden, which is the property developers. They are not doing so well, and they're trying to fight for survival because that market is not as buoyant as it used to be. So we've been watching those pretty closely. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm a property expert, but I mean, why would you want to go invest in Chinese property companies anyways when, there's so much you could do with capital right here at home and in other international companies?
All right, then let's look ahead. I mean, a lot is happening this week. Talk about manufacturing data, if you can, in South Africa, and then the big data that we're waiting for out of the United States, inflation data. I guess that will manage expectations around where interest rates are going in the US. I think that's on Wednesday.
Yes, and I mean, on the manufacturing side here in South Africa, we've seen positive surprises, because we never expect anything from, on the production side here in South Africa. But even if you look at the last GDP numbers, local manufacturing did very well, and it surprised all of us, and we like that. And the same is true with the recent numbers, and hopefully this trend, continues on. Talking about, the U.S. CPI numbers, which is the gauge for inflation, that will definitely be the economic highlight of the week. Like I said, it will be Wednesday afternoon our time, I think around 2:30. We're going to be watching that one very closely. Other events that are happening, I'm not sure if you're interested in Apple, but tomorrow is Apple's big product update event, where we'll get to see the new iPhone 15. Apparently they're going to have the USB-C charging ports and an upgrade to the Apple Watch, which had an upgrade last year. I guess they're getting more upgrades this year. There's also rumors that the AirPods and Apple Max, you're going to have new Apple Max and new AirPods. So can't wait for that personally, as a supporter of these products and investors, obviously in the actual listed company for our portfolios offshore.
Of course, and it's huge in terms of the race with Huawei, Samsung, Apple in there. Does it still have it? So something to watch out for. What about oil prices? Let's end off there. I mean, $90 per barrel, and I think it's still pretty high. So that will surely influence inflation in the United States and inflation here as well.
Yes, I mean, it's good you mentioned U.S. inflation numbers again. It's expected that energy costs are going to be higher, and probably not just this current quarter and the next quarter as well. While, the price of Brent or Western WTI, Western Texas, stays high as it is. Currently, I'm looking at it, it's $90.15 per barrel, and that's for Brent crude oil, the one we follow a lot here locally in South Africa. It's good. It's only good for these oil producers and manufacturers. It's never good for the consumer, because you quickly see, that number, coming in from an inflation standpoint, from petrol prices to goods, because all goods need to be transported using gasoline or petrol from one place to the next, and that all of a sudden your input cost increases of taking those goods from one place to the next, and that always passed on to the consumer.
Essentially, if it looks like rates are going up in the United States, that's not good for us, right? We want our higher rates to remain attractive. Is it fair enough to say that most investors looking at the inflation data this week want to see at some point that there will be no more rate increases?
Sure, that'll be great for people who are invested in the stock market, especially the high growth guys, because they want rates to be sort of where they are currently. But I mean, we know that the Fed is mostly driven by two things, and one of them is unfortunately inflation, and obviously trying to keep that below 2% is going to be very hard from where we are today, and at these high oil prices and other input costs that continue to increase side by side with wages. So it's going to be very hard to control inflation, meaning they're going to have to go back to increasing interest rates until those numbers subside.
All right, thank you very much. Bright Khumalo from Vestact Asset Management. We target an inflation rate of between 3 and 6%, the US targeting 2%. So that will be very interesting. How is it looking, those numbers coming out on Wednesday? After a break, we'll look at Sun International, how's Sun City doing, how much are South Africans gambling and taking up some leisure, and that to come.